afternoon, everyone. My name is Lato and together with Angelina, Chabalala, and Aashay, Roop, we would like to share our work, which is titled Charting a Path Forward, Lessons from Health Sciences Curriculum Development, which reflects our collaborative efforts to enhance curriculum development and delivery in the Faculty of Health Sciences. So we grounded our work with the integration of two key frameworks. We grounded our work with the integration of two key frameworks, the ADDIE model and the SIP evaluation model. While ADDIE guided our overall instructional design process, we specifically applied the SIP model during the analysis and design phases of our work, and to ensure our curriculum improvement decisions were informed using a context, input, process, and product aspects. The SIP model, developed by Beam, includes 4 branches. Context, where we looked at how effective the curriculum is being delivered to students and staff. Input, this involved selecting tools like Ulwazi, Moodle, RedCap, and Loop. The process phase is the core focus of our presentation today, where we evaluate how the curriculum is being delivered to improve the actual teaching and learning. The product in this phase will then be able to assess the outcomes and impact of the curriculum, such as student success rates and long-term improvements. We aim to provide a focal perspective of the process we went through to develop our curriculum, and mainly the virtual learning environment pedagogy, the statistical analysis, and the curriculum mapping onto Loop. Let's begin with 2 questions that have guided our inquiry into digital teaching and learning. Firstly, what defines a high-quality online learning experience from the student's perspective, and how consistently is this delivered across our courses? The second question, where are the hidden strengths and silent gaps in our digital pedagogy, and how can we use this insight to innovate? To answer these, we developed an audit tool designed to monitor and evaluate online course content across the Faculty of Health Sciences. This tool takes the form of a structured survey or checklist created on RedCap and focuses on 8 key aspects of online pedagogy, namely the introduction, navigation, basic content, communication, interactive or collaborative items, assessment, marking, evaluation, and feedback, and lastly, evidence of blended learning. The audit is conducted on courses hosted on the learning management systems like I mentioned earlier, Ulwazi and Moodle, and the data is analyzed using RedCap or Microsoft Excel. The following example shows 2 hypothetical courses which we compared using the audit scores of the selected sections of the audit form, where each section was scored based on specific criteria and the results were averaged to produce an overall audit score. So for the first course, which presented a lower score of 23.1% compared to the second course, which had a higher percentage in the basic content category, indicating that fewer types of learning materials were available compared to the second course. In the marketing, evaluation, and feedback section, the second course achieved a 69% audit score, reflecting more consistent evidence of grading practices, evaluation mechanisms, and feedback provided through the LMS. Similarly, the assessment section showed stronger performance in the second course at 58.3% and greater frequency of assessments uploaded to the LMS. Finally, in terms of blended learning, the second course again scored higher, demonstrating clearer integration of online activities with in-person learning environments, including spaces such as the e-zone. This indicates that there is no official better course overall, but there is room for improvement required across all courses in the online spaces. These findings help us identify areas of strength and weakness in digital content delivery, and they directly inform the process phase of our curriculum development, helping us answer the questions that we began with. Thank you very much. And Aashay will follow with insights from statistical analysis, showing how data informs curriculum effectiveness and equity.
Yeah, so good day, everyone. As Lato explained, today I'll be explaining the statistical application during our curriculum development phases. When it comes to curricular data, we're often faced with multiple variables and factors that influence the data that we receive from students or from a particular curriculum. As such, my job is to use statistics to help navigate this complexity for both students as well as the curriculum. The goal of this is not to dictate decisions, but to help inform decisions and allocate limited resources much more effectively. Within models like statistics supports evaluation at every stage, ensuring that curriculum remains responsive and effective. Within models like ADDIE, they strengthen the analysis and evaluation phases, ensuring that design, development, and implementation directly address the real challenges that students are facing and within the curriculum, rather than assumptions that we make. This promotes a more equitable and effective curriculum for the diverse students at WITS. So how do we use statistics? When we begin with statistical analysis, our first step is to gain an overall picture of what's happening within the curriculum and to identify patterns and challenges within it. This is done through historical analysis of the course or curriculum or since curriculum implementation. We begin with descriptive statistics, such as throughput and path rates, to see how well our students are progressing through the course. This helps those involved in the process to identify bottlenecks. For example, a module with consistently high failure rates or demographical explanations such as quintiles that are failing. Descriptive statistics helps us to summarize complex data into understandable outputs like averages, central tendencies, and percentages. Instead of working with a long list of raw marks, we can see clear patterns such as high attrition rates or patterns of high attrition, which cohorts are most at risk, and where interventions may be needed for specific courses. This provides a solid foundation for decision-making and long-term planning. Beyond description, we as well use inferential statistics to make predictions and test different variables within the curriculum. Inferential analysis allows us to move from what's happening to why it is happening and what might happen next. For example, predictive modeling using linear and logistic regressions can forecast student outcomes based on specific NSC subjects or combinations of it. Similarly, chi-square tests and t-tests can help us explore the impact of specific factors. These analyses enable us to pinpoint specific variables most strongly linked to student outcomes of a curriculum and guide targeted interventions grounded in statistical evidence rather than assumptions. When descriptive statistics show, for example, that quintile 1 to 3 schools are failing, we use inferential statistics to dive deeper into the specific variables impacting this, such as quintiles, NSC subjects, such as physics or life science marks. It's important to stress that statistics highlights our problems, but does not dictate solutions. For example, if a course consistently had high failure rates, that does not mean we should remove the course entirely. Instead, we cross-check with our curriculum mapping and workload, where we might find that the course is overloaded with content in a short time frame. This places excessive pressure on students and becomes a reason for the high failure rate, or that the course is out of sequence in the curriculum, disrupting systematic learning. In this way, statistics guides us towards the right questions. So why does stats matter in curriculum development? Statistics matters because they ensure resources are used much more wisely, based on evidence that is difficult to dispute. By identifying bottlenecks through throughput, descriptive and inferential statistics and analyses, and then triangulating with our other processes of curriculum mapping and workload, we can focus interventions where they have the most impact, whether that means tutoring support, curriculum sequencing adjustments, or reducing content overload. I thank you, and I hope to have increased your knowledge around statistical application during curriculum development, and hope you can apply it to your faculty. My colleague will now explain the third process during our curriculum development phase here at the FHS through the loop system that we employ to map our curriculum. By Angie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be taking you through one of the tools that we use for our curriculum developments, which is curriculum mapping. So curriculum mapping helps us bring together the different parts of a curriculum into a single usable picture. So it is defined as a process of visually representing what is taught, how it's taught, and how learning is assessed to make the curriculum more transparent. So what do we use for our curriculum mapping? We use a platform called Roop. This stands for Learning Opportunities, Objectives, and Outcomes Platform. This is a web-based platform that maps and aligns curricula in real time. So the types of questions that Roop can help you answer include: what is our staff and student workload? How can we better align the outcomes and teaching assessments? What are our teaching methods? And what are the gaps and overlaps in our programs? So Loop supports the quality assurance and curriculum changes. It reduces unnecessary repetition, and it links learning events to learning objectives and learning outcomes, as well as frameworks. So how do we do our curriculum map? So we first start by collecting course packs from lecturers, and then we download a mapping template from Loop. Now we will start inputting things like learning events, periods, teaching formats, as well as departments and lecturers as well, anyone who teaches, or also the course coordinators. Now I'll show you an overview of how Loop looks like. So this is an overview of Loop. So as you can see here, we have the first view, which is the learning events view. So in our learning events view, we have the learning events, the course code, the year of study, departments, periods, and teaching format. So what you can do with this, you can also download this to do things like departmental workload. You can also check the teaching methods across departments, courses, as well as programs. Then we have our objectives view. So in our objectives view, here you can see the learning. So here the learning events are linked to learning objectives. And we also have the verbs, the action verbs for each learning objectives. So here you can see the right verbs used for each learning objective. And we also have assessment as well. So this helps us understand how learning events are connected to what is taught and how it's assessed. So the next so the next view I wanted to show you guys is the course outcomes view. So the outcomes view is the same as the objectives view. This just links our learning event and objectives to course outcomes. And this will give us a bigger picture of how the objectives and assessments will all contribute to the final competencies and outcomes that learners are expected to achieve. And the last view is the objectives by framework view. So here we have different objectives, such as frameworks, such as NQF, SEQA, and HPCSA. So here, this shows how our curriculum aligns with broader institutional and accreditation frameworks. And linking all of this together will allow us to search our curriculum against external and internal standards and requirements, such as our cases and skills list. So these serve as parameters that guide how we design the current curriculum and determine what is important. And in doing this, we are able to track, monitor, and ensure that these requirements are constantly included in the curriculum. So essentially, Loop allows us to see the curriculum from different perspectives and how they are all interconnected.
So in conclusion, the Faculty of Health Sciences curriculum development process embodies a robust and ongoing endeavor that leverages an integrated flow to drive continuous improvement. The cyclical system integrates three interconnected components that we have just explained: statistical analysis using data to process data and uncover trends in the curriculum, performance, and identify bottlenecks; curriculum mapping through the Loop system to align content with learning outcomes, identify gaps, and ensure coherence, as well as our virtual learning environment auditing to provide structured data collection, tracking, and evaluation of digital platforms. Together, these processes foster mutual contributions and benefits, with information flowing continuously to inform evidence-based decision-making. While this model is not perfect, its iterative, adaptive nature, constantly evaluating and monitoring programs, enables proactive refinements, addresses emerging challenges, and enhances educational quality in response to evolving demands. If you would like these slides, you can scan the QR code. And I thank you guys for listening to our team at the Faculty of Health Sciences, and we look forward to the questions that you guys might have.
You referred to both the objectives and the outcomes. So can I just get how you differentiate those? What's in your case the outcomes and what were objectives?
So by learning objectives, we mean the ones that, if you have a different topic, maybe that you will be lecturing today in a class, for that learning event or for that topic, you have your objectives that you expect students to know about after this whole.
Like what the teacher is
The
expecting.
lecturer, yeah, the objectives, what you're expecting to get out of this.
The interaction, okay.
Right, they have verbs, which is maybe apply. Students should be able to apply.
Okay.
So those will be your objectives. And then we have our learning outcomes. So by that, so we have our exit level outcomes for the particular program. For the program, the exit level outcome for the program. That for once the students, by the end of this program, to be competent, to jump to the next, the student should accomplish all things.
So your outcomes there are the exit level outcomes for the program. And then where you're referring to objectives, you mean the intended learning outcomes, basically.
For the learning event.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? There's
Thank you very much for sharing with us your experience of mapping these courses. May you kindly share the challenges of doing an exercise such as this? Because I can see the benefit, but what challenges could be there in doing it?
So the challenges would be getting,
Maybe use a mic.
oh, just so you know. So the first challenge would be getting course packs from staff members. And as well as maybe, so you know how timetables change, right? So training, so we have to train staff members how to actually map. Because timetables are always changing. So people should be able to go onto Roop and make the changes so that the curriculum stays updated. So I think the challenge is there, getting course packs as well as getting updated timetables and information to load onto Roop.
Hi guys, I wanted to know, so with the virtual learning environment audits, after you find out that, okay, this blended learning course, there's not really much into the blend, how do you approach the lecturer to say, I would like you to improve, or how do you go about feedback, giving the lecturer feedback and seeing it come to life, or do we just give it and then?
Okay, so part of our curriculum development is the virtual learning environment audit. And so far, it's been, what can I say? We've been monitoring and evaluating. We haven't gotten to the stage where we're starting to give exact feedback and implement changes, which would be the next step in our whole process. But for now, we've just been auditing and working as many programs as we can.
Maybe I can just jump in there. Sorry, I oversee the team. And so we only actually started doing the audits last year, I think around February, focusing on our graduate courses to start with, of which we have 9 programs, and I think we've done 4 so far. Yeah. And so we haven't started feeding it through to our learning design team yet. But what we are using, or we're kind of holding the information in reserve. We've got 4 of our programs which are undergoing curriculum review at the moment. The lecturers are currently looking at what is being taught and what their outcomes are, and therefore the alignment with that, and reviewing that, and looking at some of the bottlenecks that we've identified through the stats and through the curriculum mapping. So we haven't gotten to designing with those courses as yet, but from the work that Lato is doing, when we get to the redesign of the course, we will be saying to them, well, you guys you're not communicating well, you're not optimizing the LMS in this way. And we've already started chatting to our LXD team with Renelle over there about one of the programs in particular, about how we can actually improve the navigation. Because what we found is within the same course, one lecturer will structure their block according to concepts, another will structure it according to time, and a third one will find a different way to do it. And it increases the extraneous load for the students in terms of navigating the content in the course. So it's a big problem that we have.
Good question. So we're currently struggling with notional hours in terms of the mapping process. And I'd like to know maybe what is your approach regarding that when you approach the notional hours? Because what we find is that, well, let me speak for myself, my experience, you find that it's the notional hours are indicated as maybe it's 120 hours or whatever, according to the credits, obviously, in the NQ. You find that now when the student or the participant as the one experiencing the course, let's say the time spent on the activity is 5 hours, but when you experience that specific activity for another person, it can be actually 10 hours and not actually 5. So it's quite subjective. I want to ask that, are those maybe in the mapping process and the design process actually making those who are part of the process actually quite conscious of such things?
Sorry, guys. So what we did with our medical program review, we didn't get the full putting it into the Loop platform and mapping the objectives against our exit level outcomes and our HPCSA requirements and the other catalogs, the other things that we can map against in order to check for alignment and check that we're producing what we're supposed to produce. But what we did do is from the timetables, we collated all the information in terms of what was the timetabled time that the students were spending. And even before we started adding on, like you generally in the university, people will say, well, for every hour of contact time at first year, the student should spend 1 hour at home studying, doing stuff. Even before we started doing that, we were at about 3/4 of the supposed notional hours. So it definitely made people a lot more conscious of it. And it's also a great way to monitor and track, because particularly in our programs, we don't follow things like diagonals and that sort of thing. We've got a lot of integrated programs in some of our professional courses. And so people say, oh no, we've got this new area which we need to teach the students about, this new genetic test. Well, let's add on a lecture. And so having that living curriculum map, and as Connie rightly said, the living is the difficult part. Getting the staff to buy in is very difficult. It allows you to monitor and track. If I remove them or change the objectives of this lecture, what am I actually affecting in the 3rd year of study or in a different part of the curriculum? What's the implication? It also allows you to say, okay, well, should we bring these 2 things together rather, and plan in that sort of way? And then it does allow us to say, well, we're over on our notional hours. What should we cut? And one of the difficulties with content that I've always seen is the conversation usually goes around embryology in our faculty, which is the human development in the womb. And so the conversation will usually go, there's way too much in embryology when they're 5 lectures. The students don't need to know embryology. Then the next point is, no, they need to understand how the septum, the wall between the chamber of the hearts develop, because that's an important common anomaly that they'll see. And then they'll say, okay, so we need to teach the students embryology and it'll go up to 10 lectures. Whereas actually only 15 minutes of one lecture might be to do with the heart, if that makes sense. So it helps to make those sorts of general conversations a lot more concrete, because you can actually look and say, okay, so what's related to this topic? And so that's one of the real values of the curriculum map that we're finding even before we map to catalogs. Did I answer your question on notional hours? It really helps you. Yeah, it helps you to identify where a course is or isn't within the notional hours. But you do still need to establish within your faculty what are acceptable norms for 1 hour of contact to 1 hour of assessment prep self-study, or what's that individual student study time. The way that we've done it in our faculty, we said, okay, if you take an average student, not even an average student, if you take the borderline student, what does the borderline student need to do in order to be successful in this course? And that is always, unfortunately, going to be a thumb suck.
I have a question, if you're willing. A final question, because we do have 5 more minutes left of the session if you want to keep to time. But my question is, and you pull it up. Okay, so see, this process is iterative, and I want to know in practical terms, perhaps you already answered this. How do you guys manage the constant state of redevelopment without causing fatigue among faculty and destabilizing the program for current students?
I think, John, to answer your question with that, we have a small team within Faculty of Health Sciences, and we allocate our tasks differently. So, for example, I do the stats within the curriculum. He does virtual learning auditing, and Angie does the curriculum loop mapping. So, like we said, there's no set model or perfect model that we follow, but we found in our experience that this gives us enough information to make informed decisions. And when you put that workload out like in the way that we have, and that we use statistics, or in my example, we use statistics to help identify specific problems so that limited resources can be used effectively. That's the point I was trying to put forward most importantly. It helps to reduce where our attention is focused on. And with that, I think instead of focusing on the whole program, for example, we focus on specific problems, and that helps us to be much more effective and reduces the strain on staff themselves who are involved in this curriculum development. And when you say that it destabilizes the curriculum it destabilizes the program for students and stuff, I think we also involve stakeholder analyses, stakeholder engagement. So with that, I think it helps stabilize it much more. But like it's not a top-down approach that we're trying to come from. We're trying to come from a bottom-up approach where we identify challenges, and instead of using a definitive answer such as if stats say this, or like I said, that the course has high failure rates, doesn't necessarily mean that we remove the course entirely. Instead, we see with our workload analyses where the course might be out of sequence, and then that helps specify the problem, and it helps resolve the problem by identifying the specific aspects of it that are affecting the specific problem identified within stats. Not sure if that was.
Maybe I can go through some. So one of the first things that we do when any program asks us to help them with a review is we don't actually start with much of this. We start with, well, why are you wanting to make changes? What are your problems? What are you trying to address? And so, like the team said, they do stakeholder focus groups with staff and students to try and figure out what the issues are. And I think one of the big things that stops staff burnout is often curriculum decisions are made kind of on people's gut feeling rather than on a documented analysis of what the problem might be. And then you try and, it's not perfect, but we try and check that against, for example, the stats or the audit or whatever it might be that we can use. And so that stops staff going around in circles quite a bit. And it also means that the team collects that data. The team also does benchmarking against other programs and other information, which then we can feed to the academics who have to make the decisions. And so the academics' time is focused. Usually for any given program, we ask them for 2 hours a week that they are involved initially in deciding what the changes will be to their curriculum, which then increases their buy-in. And because they can see the data, they then get why they're making that change, which actually makes the change management easier. There are problems with communicating it beyond the group that we're working with, yes. And that's why we come up with other issues. But that then, the people within the team are motivated for the change. For example, we've been working with the dental program now since about June. And I think there's 15 heads of department, and we've had at least 2/3 of them at every single meeting. Or one of their representatives. Now that's great buy-in from the departments. You know, they're seeing and they're identifying their problems and seeing and coming up with the solutions, which means that they then are more motivated to carry on and implement them.